Hey, everybody. Welcome to Let's Fix Work. I'm Lori Rudiman. Today's guest is Sam Weston. He's a former political advisor turned PR executive turned technology consultant. Sam is living the American dream and working with executives, academics, millionaires, and policymakers on improving technology literacy in Washington. And he's doing this as an expat from New Zealand, now living in Minneapolis. Sam knows that we've got a bunch of people who don't know anything about AI or blockchain fighting old political battles from the 20th century. He believes that if you fix technology literacy, you have a chance at fixing work and fixing the world. Now, Sam and I have been friends since 2007, and we have an interesting conversation that's been edited down to just the good stuff. I know you'll love Sam and his accent, and I know you'll really enjoy hearing what he has to say about fixing the modern workforce. So sit tight. I'll be right back after the break with Sam Weston on Let's Fix Work.
Work is broken. So is the way you think about it. Host Lori Rudiman is breaking things down so you can put them back together and make work something you can enjoy. Let's fix work together. With the Let's Fix Work podcast, here's Lori.
One thing you'll notice about Sam right off the bat is that he's not from around here. So what's a guy like Sam doing in American politics? Well, he worked in New Zealand politics for several years before coming to the U.S. to do the same. What prompted that move, though, was a bit too much West Wing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, growing up in New Zealand, American politics was like celebrities. It was like playing in the majors, right? So, and America is kind of the only country where you can get paid to work in consulting, legally and not in like suitcases of cash. So, people like me, political nerds from all over the world, want to grow up and work in American political consulting because we grew up watching too much West Wing, and we would like to sort of live out those fantasies. And I got the chance to do that for several years in DC.
Sam's time in political consulting required him to learn how to use the right combination of words to help win elections. Not surprisingly, that's the same skill set you need for PR, and he landed at the PR firm Rubenstein.
It was a real eye-opener for me because, I'd spent a lot of my life, sort of in political knife fights, and this sort of gave me the perspective of, how brands were built in America and how the news gets made. And I was also doing it at a time when everything was changing and we would have debates on a daily basis about whether or not bloggers were reporters.
Sam worked in PR and then a web agency called Huge when the internet was changing business dramatically. He saw how companies either embraced the internet or failed. Now, Sam's history as a political consultant allows him to draw some unique parallels. But first, I asked him if we live in a better world now, post-internet adoption by businesses.
I think that for business, it's been terrific. I mean, you only have to look at the stock market to see how companies
okay,
have grown.
Donald Trump, for some business, it's been terrific. Not all businesses.
Well, this is an important part of the conversation, right? Businesses have grown at the expense of employees significantly over the last 20 plus years, and the internet has just been gasoline on that fire. I think that technology and the internet specifically has fueled enormous cost effectiveness in business. It's allowed businesses to rip all sorts of jobs and bureaucracies out of their systems and return more money to their shareholders, which is about the only ambition that most large companies have. So has it been good for the world? I think it's a bit of both, right? Like there are definite improvements in the world as a result of communications technology. Even Mark Zuckerberg, has made positive impacts on the world.
Well, maybe. I mean, he's got that hospital, right? He's done a few nice things, but man, at the expense of relationships, at the expense of lives and also society, in Mark Zuckerberg's world, the company is the community. right? I mean, that's the model
Yeah.
he's setting up. And I think we've seen that playbook before. We've seen the Pullman cars, we've seen all of the
Yeah.
robber barons back in the day who really wanted employees to also buy from them and be a part of them and
Hmm.
create this internal ecosystem. And then when it all collapses, it collapses hard. So, like,
Yeah.
I'm not too keen on Mark Zuckerberg right now. I'm a little worried.
No, look, I agree. I think that changes like this really calamitous effects, as they roll through, right? I think that Facebook changed the world. I mean, it's easy to joke about it right now, because it's made a long running series of systemic errors that make you wonder about the core values and priorities of the company. But, at the same time, it has allowed people to do something that they fundamentally couldn't do before it existed.
Yeah, like what? What is Facebook allowing us to do that we didn't do before?
It allows you to keep an eye, sort of peripherally appreciate the lives in motion of everybody that you have ever come into contact with. But I think that the ability to appreciate, the changes and evolution of more people's lives, be conscious of, what's going on in your, your own social network, I think is a good thing. I think unfortunately, too much of social media is driven by the business incentives of the platforms.
Yeah, it's like business incentives and ego. Although you're right in that Facebook, Twitter, all of these different apps have really enabled a different kind of communication and connectivity. I think about the way we met. I actually met your ex-wife on the internet. She was a fan of mine and reached out to me when you were at a critical point in your career and said, "Could you give my husband some career advice?" And I'm like, "Oh God, this is gonna it's gonna go one of two ways." And it went away. But your wife is lovely. You're lovely. We've become in real life friends. And I think about how important it's been for us over the past decade, and it's really been a decade, to meet in real life, to maintain those connections. Because if you just existed on the internet, I would not care about your job. I would not care about your career. But we made an effort to be friends. And I think that's made all the difference for me.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think that's the internet in a nutshell. It enables all sorts of new things, gives people the opportunity to meet people directly, which creates business opportunities. It gives people an enormous platform for new types of creativity and thinking. But it also exposes you to fake news and just a bunch of bullshit.
And fake brands and inauthentic brands and inauthentic messaging. Yeah, totally. Well, you talked about starting your own consultancy, and I want to talk about that because I work in the world of consulting, specifically in the world of work. And there are all these consultants out there who monetize a solution. And they believe that their solution is the most effective solution in fixing work, whether it's technology driven, process driven, systems driven. And they feel as if you just implement that one solution in the world of work, it's like a house of cards and everything, well, a reverse house of cards, but everything will fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
It is like a house of cards, actually. But everything will fall into place if you just do this prescriptive thing we're telling you to do. So what's your take on consultants in the world of work? And have you seen anything that you like? Is anybody out there fixing work? Anything that really sticks with you? And I would imagine, having seen so many clients, huge, there are really good work environments out there. And I wonder if you can comment on, what does a good work environment look like?
Right. Well, fixing work is the perfect marketing pitch, because everybody has their own unique, misery-inspired perspective on what's broken about work. Right?
Yeah, this podcast is testament to that.
And that's as true for the consultants that are selling stuff, for the purchasers on the client side that are buying stuff, and for the employees that are suffering through it.
Yeah,
meanwhile,
totally.
right?
Yeah.
I think a lot of the things that are quote unquote broken about work aren't really broken at all. Communication at work. Like, do employees need more communication? Maybe. Is the answer to fixing communication at work Slack and GitHub and 1,000 different messaging?
I hope not. Holy shit. Yeah.
Because more communication at work doesn't necessarily fix the communication problem, right? And I can think of 100 let's fix work by fixing a specific thing that don't fix the global problem that
Yeah.
work.
So wait, so what's the global problem?
Well, the global problem, as much as I can come up with one in terms of workplaces, is that no one is fixing work for employees. And when you think about consultants going out and pitching ideas to fix work, they're pitching them to employers who are going to pay them lots of money to fix their problems. And most employers are pretty happy with the way things are. Their biggest challenge right now is finding emerging skill sets, to help them do new things, and firing the old people as fast as they can.
Yeah, the ones who are expensive and don't meet that new required skill set. Yeah, that makes sense.
There are very few companies that exist to really take care of their employees beyond a marketing tactic. And I think the biggest challenge that people looking to fix work, could really take up is, how do you fix work on behalf of employees?
Wait, do you think companies should fix work on behalf of employees? Because I do. I think there's a responsibility. If you're in this marketplace and you benefit from the tax dollars and the hard work of individuals, you have an obligation to treat people well. But not all people think like that, Sam. What do you think?
Well, absolutely. I mean, companies are the people that make them up.
Well, that's what Mitt Romney says, yeah.
Companies are the people that do the work. And unfortunately, that's not the way that companies operate.
Yeah.
Most companies, and I think you've been very effective in saying this, like most human resources departments are not there for the humans in the workplace. They're there to represent the interests of the employer and the business. And so any initiatives that are trying to fix work that aren't really focused on identifying and solving employee problems aren't going to solve problems for employees. They will continue to solve problems for employers, which will keep employees as happy as possible at the lowest possible salary for as long as the employer needs them, and then get rid of them in the most seamless way possible.
You are a cynic just like me. That's why you're on this podcast. Yeah, that's right. We are dear friends for this. Well, wait a second. So what are the core employee related issues that you're seeing in the global workforce? Because it's really, it's communication, but everybody has communication problems, right?
There's two. There are two problems, I think.
Okay, let me hear 'em.
For most people, the problem is making enough money to live. Most people have experienced downward pressure on their wages effectively over the last 3 decades. They are struggling to make ends meet in a world where you need to buy more and more stuff and everything gets more expensive. The fundamental problem is that the interests of the company, returning profit to shareholders, and the interests of the employee are diametrically opposed. And so the first biggest problem is, just how do I, as an employee, get paid what I'm worth? And for the other set, it's deriving meaning from your work. Because when you have enough money to live, the thing that keeps you up at night, the thing that makes you wonder whether or not you should take another job or quit your job, is whether or not what you're doing has any purpose and whether you're wasting your life. And I think that in Silicon Valley and certain technology firms, they've done a good job of selling meaning to their employees, but it's hollow. It's largely hollow. Facebook is a great example. A company that I'm sure tells its employees that they're connecting the world, but is essentially a large advertising platform. And
yeah, you wrote about that in Fast Company Design, right? So tell us a little bit about that.
I don't know about you, but I don't know very many people that are hopeful about the world of work. And I'd like to change that. My name's Marcus Mossberger, and I started the Hope at Work podcast, where you'll find two things. Number one, really interesting guests. And number two, innovative ideas about the future of work. Check it out.
Well, I think one of the things that technology companies in general have had to do in order to compete for scarce resources is to convince these employees who could go anywhere that they wanted that working at their company is the best way to change the world. But, the business models for those companies, by and large, are creating enormous databases of users that you can then package up and sell to advertisers.
I want to stop right there because I want to make sure my audience and my listeners get this. What you're saying is Facebook is no different than Time Magazine or People Magazine or National Enquirer, right?
Right. It is a much more sophisticated platform because it has derived far more intimate, information about every single one of its 2 billion users. But it essentially exists to give that information to people who want to advertise. And that is what keeps Facebook growing. That's what keeps the shareholders happy. That is what Mark and Cheryl spend most of their time thinking about.
Amazing. Amazing.
And we don't talk about that
Not at
because
all.
Facebook does a very good job, just like other companies, of wrapping their business up in, a broader meaning and purpose. And back to your original question, this is what most, sort of high value employees are looking for in their work, but that is missing from most employee experiences because fundamentally companies don't have any higher ambition than returning value to the shareholders.
Well, that's pretty depressing. So you mentioned two things about the problems of work, which is employees need to earn more money in order to survive. And then for the employees who are making a decent wage, they need more meaning. They need true meaning. And so is that what the future of work is all about, addressing those two core things? Or is the future of work about automation and robots and monkeys turning into, part hybrid machines? Like what's the future of work then?
Well, it's totally applicable to the future of work. In fact, even more so, because dynamics like not necessarily monkeys, but automation are going to strip work away from more and more people, making both money and meaning the things that we have to spend most of our time thinking about over the next sort of 25, 30 years. We will see as artificial intelligence makes its way into services and products that are able to reduce the number of accountants that you need, offset certain roles that doctors can do, all sorts of service and clerical white-collar professions over the next, even the next decade. The amount of change that is coming will be significant, and automation won't be a problem that just affects factory workers and taxi drivers. It will be something that affects your dad's friend, John, who was a lawyer for 40 years, and your niece who can't find, a job after graduating from law school because they're not taking on junior associates,
So is the future of work not work?
I think that for more and more people, that will be the case. I think that the jury is out on whether or not the sort of coming wave of AI will create more jobs than it eliminates, in the long run. I think technology has always created new types of jobs and new opportunities for new jobs. What we don't talk about, though, is the jobs that it destroys and the lives that are caught up in that change, right? I think, I've been to enough AI conferences now to hear people who are technical experts asked, this specific question, is AI going to destroy all jobs? And they always say, well, in the long run, it will create more jobs. But in the short run, maybe you shouldn't really ask me this question.
Well, yeah. Are there any government institutions or policymakers really thinking about the lives that are being affected right now? Or are we all just trying to forget that my Uncle John or my cousin Toby lost their job and they've been unemployed since they've been 42 years old, right?
I don't want to say that this is, the responsibility of the innovator, because people who, are trying to create new things, don't want to be burdened with the consequences of their work.
Yeah, that's the history of the industrial movement, everything here in America. Let's put the technology in and not worry about the lives. Yeah.
But that's exactly it, right? Yeah. So, but it is the responsibility of the businesses that hire those innovators and the politicians that sort of govern the regulatory infrastructure that supports our economy, right? And among those audiences, there is nowhere near the attention to these issues that there needs to be. The reason that we have Donald Trump as president and Brexit in the UK is because social democrats, of whom I am a proud affiliate, pushed for modernization of trade and technology initiatives for the last 20 plus years, because they were really important for our economies and our countries. But we paid lip service to all of the consequences. We paid lip service to the need for retraining and helping people who were affected by that change. We did nothing to actually support the people who lost their jobs when jobs went to India, or jobs were taken by robots, right, on the factory floor. And there were reasons, there were always reasons that Democrats didn't double down on helping the people who were affected by those changes.
Yeah, lobbyists, money. I mean, those reasons, right?
Well, I
politically
think
not expedient, right?
Politically not expedient, I think, is big one. I think Democrats, because they have lacked a responsible debate partner for the last 15 years in the US, have become the party of sort of upholding the status quo.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, essentially, Democrats, because the party had to become committed to keeping the country intact without...
I can't argue with crazy, that's for sure.
Right. Became, to a lot of the people that they used to represent, the party that was defending the status quo that was no longer working for them, right? So anyway, Democrats, because they didn't want to be associated with the unions and left-wing politics, didn't really double down on helping the people that were caught up in this sort of creative destruction of jobs. And now, having penalized, finally, by a lot of those voters, voting for someone who has no interest in their lives, really, but, who talks a much better game.
It's all very interesting. And I think it's so right. I mean, we don't talk about accountability within the Democratic Party for Donald Trump. And we helped to create this monster. So that was really well said and really interesting.
It's totally the consequence of paying lip service to the changes that we pushed out of necessity over the last 20 years.
And now we're backed into a corner where to do the things we need to do, it costs political capital as well as real capital in order to go into Appalachia and educate and provide health care and to do things right in certain parts of this country. I mean, it takes a total transformation of our economy, our educational system. It takes us having a backbone and going against patriarchal structures, the evangelical church, right? I mean, there's so much work to be done, and we've made it exponentially harder from 20 years of lack of courage.
Yeah, well, we face real questions about what we want to do in the face of this change. I think that the Democratic Party has become the party of the winners in America, and it used to be the party of not the losers, but the people who needed help,
people,
right?
Yeah.
And this is not just applicable to Democrats; it's applicable to businesses and everybody who's been successful, and whose success has been enabled by changes brought about by technology. What are we going to do with what we've made? And I think that if you ask people in our situation, a lot of them will tell you, well, fuck those people. They voted for Donald Trump. Let them get what they deserve.
But not fuck those people, because those people are a monolithic voting bloc that are going to continue to vote in a government that doesn't care about the right policy that enables innovation and change.
Yeah, there are certain structural political reasons in America why fuck those people is not like a argument you want to make in the short term.
Yeah.
But I think there's a bigger debate to be had, which is, in the world that we are building, where all the money lives in cities on the coasts, what do we want the heartland? What do we want the places that used to be the backbone of America to look like in the future? Is there a future for them? Do we encourage people to live in small town America? Or do we just write those people off for essentially making bad decisions?
Wait, as a man living in Minneapolis, do you feel like you've made a bad decision?
Minneapolis is a solid B tier city, so I feel like I'm right in the middle of this.
So wait, do you have a vision? Do you know what the future of work, what the future of America looks like now that you're here and you're a resident and you have children who are citizens of this country? I mean, you're as invested in not only the global marketplace, but also the US marketplace. So what does the future look like?
The future looks really scary for a lot of people. I think a lot of adults with kids will tell you that they have no idea what their kids will end up doing when they leave school. The education system is certainly not preparing them for the world that they're going into. I think we don't really know what the economy is going to look like in 10, 15 years because it has been changing so rapidly. We've had the iPhone for 10 years, right? 10 just a decade ago.
Only 10 years.
Right? Like now, your phone dictates your life, right? You never really let go of it.
Sadly, that's true. Yeah.
And I think that there will be more change in the next 10 years than the last 10 years. I think that will create lots of new, exciting opportunities for people who are entrepreneurial. But I also think that a lot of the change that's coming will be to remove types of manual labor and service jobs that make up a decent amount of what people do day to day and have done for decades in America. And how we help those people, what those people do, will be a major issue for everybody to confront politically, socially.
Well, let's talk about that. When we come back, we'll talk about the future of work and what stands in the way of fixing work and fixing our society. But before we take a break, I want to ask you something. Does it drive you crazy when Americans try to replicate the New Zealand accent?
It doesn't really happen a lot.
Happened at your wedding at the table.
It's true. I we're a small country, so
That's right.
we enjoy it, any positive, supporting efforts that we get.
Well, good. Well, everybody, when we come back, we'll do Sam's accent and we'll talk about fixing work. Hang tight. See you in a second.
Hey, are you ready to podcast like a pro? Then you need a secret weapon, someone who can make it easy, where all you have to do is show up and be the host. At One Stone Creative, that's what we do. Everything. Yeah, everything. Imagine, every time you sit down to record, you know what your topic is. You want a script? We can do that too. Then you record it, drop it in a folder, and that's it. Our team will take it from there. Production, show notes, uploads, blog posts, social media assets, swipe copy, like I said. Everything. Book a call with the podcast strategist today. Just go to onestonecreative.net/podcast. That's onestonecreative.net/podcast. And we'll take it from there.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Lori Rudiman, and this is Let's Fix Work. I'm here today with my good friend, Sam Weston, who is going to teach me how to do a New Zealand accent. Just kidding, Sam. Don't do that. It'd be so bad.
I'm terrible with any accent other than my own. So
Yeah. Good. Fair. All right. Well, we've been talking about what's wrong, and you and I are dear friends because we're both Debbie Downers. We could do this all day, every day, just complain. But I want to know what stands in the way of fixing work and fixing society. And then maybe we can talk about some of the good things that we can be doing. So just real briefly, what stands in the way of, policy, process, systems, improving the quality of life for global citizens?
Just quickly.
Three answers. That's all I want.
Well, from a policy standpoint, one of the biggest problems is the lack of literacy among policymakers. There has been so much change, and most of the people who are elected officials in America didn't go into politics because they really cared about writing policy.
No.
They did it because it was the last thing to do after running their town's most successful used car sales lot. And that was they'd made their $1 million, and that was the last thing to put on the resume. And the general age and stage and priorities of people in Congress aren't really aligned with the changes that are happening out there in technology. So I think helping policymakers, and that includes their teams as well, develop enough of an understanding about the foundations of this change to apply their own political instincts to it is one of the most important things that we can do. We often debate, most politics in America is debating 60-year-old fights. Like, we've been fighting the same fights over and over and over again, election after election, when there are all sorts of new issues to talk about. And there are issues that are exciting issues to talk about because they're not politicized yet, right? And so one thing that's a priority for me in my career is finding a way to help politicians think about technology in bigger ways than just how can I use this, like what's Twitter and how can I use it to help me win my next election?
Well, that's where they are right now. And I know that this is something you're passionate about and talked about at South by Southwest. And so tell us a little bit about some of the cool things that we could be focused on instead of stupid Twitter and stupid Snapchat.
Well, changes like artificial intelligence are obviously top of mind because they're so much broader than a single issue or industry, right? AI has the potential to cut across industries and society in a way that we haven't really seen, I guess, since the internet really rolled around, right?
Yeah.
But there are all sorts of new, unexplored areas, whether it's biotechnology, travel.
Your travel point is really interesting because I just read today that international space travel for civilians is within reason. It's like going to be here before we know it. And none of us are thinking about that. We're arguing about abortion. We're arguing about affirmative action, and we're not thinking about the environmental and social implications of just going to the moon for the day, at which there are truly environmental implications with all that waste that's going to be generated from this and the impact on what it's like on our bodies, right, to do that kind of travel. So you're right, there's cool stuff we could be talking about and who owns the routes that go to the moon and all that interesting stuff. Nobody's chatting about it.
Right. And, even basic stuff, the stuff that has sort of underscored a lot of the debate about Facebook, for example, privacy. What does privacy look like in the world that we've created for ourselves and that we are creating? Most people in politics don't really know enough about the basics to develop a political position on it.
And so is this something that you're doing as part of this new phase in your career, really helping policymakers and their teams think about the implications of technology?
What I'm working on is an initiative to help policymakers understand the basics of artificial intelligence and explain it to them in a contextualized way that makes it politically relevant for them. And I think that this is an initiative it's interesting to me, not just because I'm interested in artificial intelligence and all the issues that are wrapped up in it, but because a lot of nonprofit advocacy efforts they're never as effective as they should be because they stop, they don't do the last mile. They do a very good job of raising awareness, publishing content, but if that content doesn't make it into the hands of someone who can do something with it.
Is that the last mile, getting it into a policymaker's hands so they can enact legislation?
Yeah, and in a way that they can use it with the context that makes it important to them. I think that we're drowning in awareness about every single issue.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, right.
But we're not drowning in change.
No, we are not drowning in change.
Most advocacy organizations, and this is somewhat unfair to them, I think, but a lot of advocacy and nonprofit organizations aren't really incentivized to fix the problem. They're incentivized to promote the problem and make everybody care about it because that's how they raise more money to keep doing what they're doing. They're not trying to put themselves out of business. I'm not saying that this approach, necessarily improves on that, but it goes that extra mile of helping, going directly to the people that need to close the gap and giving them the information and the action points in order to do so. And I think that's closing that gap on artificial intelligence is the most important thing that anybody can be working on in the next 5 years. So that's what I really want to focus on. But, it's equally true for anybody, whether that issue is climate change or space travel.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned working yourself out of a job and really making sure that the investments that you're taking in today are solving the problem instead of just perpetuating the cycle of awareness. When I worked in human resources, I often said, there's no reason why I need to have this job. If I teach you something and you learn how to do whatever it is, like be a decent fucking human being, right? You don't need me to be your HR generalist and continually teach you how to do that. So that approach really resonates with me. And I think that we could be making investments in the next 5 to 10 years to prepare us for a better future, really taking the money from either the federal government or from taxpayers and putting them in certain places where the investment really reaps benefits. So I have opinions on this, but I wonder if you have an opinion on where we ought to be investing our time and resources to fix work and fix our society.
Hey, it's Bob Pulver, host of You Podcast. human-centric AI, AI-driven transformation, hiring for skills and potential, dynamic workforce ecosystems, responsible innovation. These are some of the themes my expert guests and I chat about, and we certainly geek out on the details. Nothing too technical. I hope you check it out.
Have you ever wondered what really makes a generation tick? Who gets to pick the name? And why the slang keeps changing? Don't worry, I can help. My name's Dr. Megan Grace. On hashtag Gen Z, I share the voices and experiences of Generation Z, how they're different from other generations, what moves them, and why they do what they do. In each episode, we go beyond the buzzwords and the stereotypes to dive into real conversations and the insights that matter to making intergenerational collaboration a reality. You can catch hashtag Gen Z on the Work to Find podcast network and wherever you listen to podcasts.
Well, I think the thing that we have lacked for a long time in America, and not exclusive to America, is a cohesive vision for the future. I think that most campaigns are fought out by people who have message tested the right things to say in order to eke out a 5-point at best margin of victory. There is little in the way of real vision for the future expressed by political leaders. And I think actually even by business leaders, because when you survey people working in technology, their ambition is almost always sell,
Yeah.
make $1 billion and then figure out what's next, right?
Or wrapped in a thinly veiled attempt to sound like Deepak Chopra and to help everybody become self-actualized. That's the other message of Silicon Valley. Like, we're gonna sell you stuff, but we're also gonna make you into a better human being. Both of which
for
can't happen.
as much as he makes me roll my eyes, Elon Musk is almost singular in his ability to express and then back up a broad vision for the future. And
so wait, he makes you roll your eyes? He does. He's kind of a doofus, but I love Elon Musk because you're right. There's a lack of a moonshot. That word is so overused, but we don't have a national moonshot on anything. We have partisan politics, but Elon Musk is thinking about the neural net and stuff that's just insane at this point. He's got that vision. He's inspired by Kanye, but he's pretty great.
Well, that's why I said roll your eyes, right? There are lots of people who have put together the right string of buzzwords to get them through a PowerPoint presentation, and keep a job for an extra year. Elon Musk is very singular in business for his ability to do that, but then also back it up with space rockets that can go to space and then land themselves, or cars that can drive on batteries and look sexy at the same time. I think that what is really inspiring about him is that he's not afraid of having a broad ambition and committing the resources to actually deliver on it. And I think that it is very, very depressing to me that for the amount of wealth that has been created and transferred in the last 2 generations, that we only really have one Elon Musk. If you're a billionaire, the only excuse for you not having a similar level of ambition at this point is just sheer laziness.
God, that's so well said. Those fucking millionaires. Oh my God. But you're right. If you have that kind of money, where are the Carnegies or the Rockefellers, the people who created libraries and universities? Where are they now, Sam?
Well, those foundations continue to do good work. And I don't think that they are the core of the problem. I think that there are thousands of millionaires, hundreds of billionaires created regularly, who are just not putting that money to work for a real socially important vision. So that's part of the problem and also part of the solution if you can fix it. But it's also paralleled by the lack of ambition in the political sphere. And I think that, to your earlier question, we as citizens should be really looking to government and saying, with all this amazing technology that is changing the economy, creating wealth, putting people out of work, how are you using it to make life better for us, right? We don't ask that question. No one out there has really been pushing it. But I think it has the potential to be a transformative question. And we have another campaign coming up very, very shortly where more candidates will, I think, look to answer it. The first 2 declared candidates in the Democratic side of the aisle are both are both running on AI platforms to some degree.
And who are those two candidates? There's one from Maryland, right?
Yeah, Congressman John Delaney, who is the founder of the AI caucus, and Andrew Yang from New York, who's running on basic income. But, we should be, those of us who are inclined and working in technology, should be doing more to help politicians talk and think and create ideas that harness these technologies to improve life for everybody and to solve some of these long-running problems by, to the best that we can, making them obsolete.
I do want to end by asking you one question, because when I asked where are the Rockefellers and where are the Carnegies, I meant where are the new ones, right? Where are the new people out there? And I know you're passionate about taking people who are founders and, maybe founded a great organization and they're at a different stage in their life. You want to connect those individuals with really smart designers, creative people, right? So they can start working on some of the answers to society's problems. So can you talk a little bit about that vision and what that might look like?
Yeah, it's a hypothesis.
Yeah, tell me about your hypothesis.
My hypothesis is that there are a significant enough number of people out there with the means to change the world that just need help with the ends. And that is in articulating a vision, but it's also in assembling the teams of experts to help them do it and to do things quickly. I think a lot of the philanthropic industrial complex that has built up over the last 100 years, like I said before, goes toward creating an institution that will last another 100 years, right? That's not how things should work or, do work today. You should be able to bring together a team of 5, 10 people and quickly launch products, experiences, services that solve real problems. One of the things that I was most proud to work on at Huge was a product called Notifica, which came out of a hackathon that we held, where a small team of 5 people in partnership with United We Dream, which is one of the leading advocacy organizations for young dreamers, created a product, Notifica, that serves as an alert system for people at risk of deportation. When ICE comes to your door, you can hit a single button that sends an alert to customized alerts to your support network that let them know what's happening to you, right? That doesn't solve the problem of Donald Trump's racist immigration policies, but it solves a real problem, a very real problem for immigrants and their families.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's like an emergency button, right? It sends out a beacon to all your friends. And
it took people 6 weeks to work on,
amazing.
From start to scratch. Didn't really cost a lot of money to build. Could have been done for free with the right combination of volunteers. And I think that for people who have the means, that's what the future looks like. Bringing together small teams to work on discrete problems that are part of a larger vision in order to level up the human experience over time.
Well, Sam, I want to let everybody know that if they've got the means, you've got the ends. So why don't we tell everybody where they can find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Sam Weston and at samweston.co.
Great. Well, everybody, I'll be right back to wrap things up. And Sam, thank you so much for your time today. Hey, everybody. I love to brag about my friends. I also like to listen to them. And right now, I'm listening to Jennifer McClure, host of the Impact Makers podcast. Jennifer is connecting with leaders across all industries to figure out how to make a difference at work and in the world. Here's what she's got going on.
I believe strongly that each of us has the ability and the opportunity to positively impact people through our work and through how we choose to live our lives. The truth is that you've already impacted people in this world, even if you haven't been trying.
I love what Jennifer has to say. And if you like what you're hearing right here on Let's Fix Work, you'll love what Jennifer's talking about on Impact Makers. So go to jennifermcclure.net/iTunes and subscribe today. Welcome back. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Sam Weston. God, I love that guy. And I will quickly tell you, I met him in 2007 through his first wife, who was a stand-up comedian. Yeah, that's kind of how my life goes. And I'm so lucky because Sam is just an interesting guy. Please connect with him on LinkedIn and on the internet. And while you're at it, connect with me at Let's Fix Work or L. Rudiman. You can also email me at hello@letsfixwork.com. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe, rate, review, share. Give us a 5-star review. We love that. And we're always happy when we see good feedback. So find us on your favorite podcast player. Let's Fix Work is a production of One Stone Creative. Audra Casino and Megan Doherty, they know the internet and they make me sound great. And by the way, we have help on social media and content from Gerson Laflèche. And I know my French accent isn't that great. We really appreciate the fact that you listen. That's all for this time. And we'll see you again next week on Let's Fix Work.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Let's Fix Work. Wouldn't you love to get your hands on Lori's no-holds-barred, honest HR handbook for employees and pros alike? Download it for free at lorirudiman.com/DIYHR.